Okay, I've got half an hour here. I thought I'd try and record some details of the game in respect of morale, unit morale, unit fire, unit meleeing as requested. So I think the best place to start is with morale, because the first phase in every turn is the rally phase. So units that were routed from the previous turn may be rallied. Every unit has a chance to rally. This unit was routed. He has a leader on top of him. And every unit has a... Excuse me a moment here. Okay. Every unit has a morale number. This unit's morale is C. And the 6 is just the movement value, and between there's a little dash that you can see. The number on the side there is the number of the company, so that's the second of maybe 2 or 3 of the Brunswicker regiment. So anyway, so his morale value is C. So what you do is you go to the morale check tables, which is on the map, and you go to the rally section, and you look for morale C. I added it helpers under here, and then you roll the dice. So simply 1d6 rolled for that fellow on a 1 to 4, which is what I got. He's not rallied. On a 5 to 6 he is rallied, but as it says down here, remember to adjust for effective officers. When they say officers, they mean the officers of each regiment, but also commanders that strictly in the game aren't officers, but they count as well. This is a commander. In fact, he's an interesting figure. He's got, I think he's a double officer and commander. But anyway, a commander or any officer on actually stacked with a unit adds +1 to that rally roll. +1 only with any officer, blah blah blah. So of the correct formation. So that fellow was lucky. He actually got 5, so he did rally, and that's how we do rally. Now over here we have 2 unfortunate fellows. Their morale is B. So that they needed to roll for rally. They would have rallied on a 4 to 6. They had a leader with them, so they would have got +1. But I rolled a 1 and a 2, so neither of them rallied. So at this point they will 1, 2, 3. They will route back 3 more hexes. They routed the initial moment they moved 3 hexes back. The initial moment they routed, and then they will do it again every time they aren't rallied in the rally phase. I'm electing to let that leader move with them. In fact, I'll put them underneath so I can remember they need to be routed. And then we have one here. That's interesting. That's crew of a gun that they have. D. Wow, that's terrible. So they will only rally on a 6. I think the American gun crews have a morale of C. Yes. So no, he didn't rally. 1, 2, 3. So he's more or less gone for good, and that's awful, because then that means we have uncrewed guns. So I'm going to keep him with them. That's rally. Now the second phase of a turn is defensive ranged cannon fire phase. That's your opponent, the non-phasing player. So morale may come into this in that if you see the fire combat results table, cannons, because that's only what we'll be firing this phase, are either firing at foot guns or rarely the single bateau counter. And on a 1 to 6 roll, it could be modified down by 1, maybe up by 2. But anyway, on a 1 to 6 against foot, 4 out of 5 results are a morale check. 1 out of 6 results is an automatic, it's not correctly labelled at the bottom there, is an automatic rout. Against, if they're firing at cannons, then you have disruptions and eliminations, and cannons don't have morale themselves. if a unit has to check morale as a result of a combat result, such as from cannon fire, then again you check their morale rating, and they may have no effect, they may be disrupted, or they may suffer an automatic rout. The automatic rout, they move back towards either essentially that side or the other side of the map, and 3 hexes, not 3 movement points, just 3 hexes. Disrupted means they have a disrupted counter on them, and that will effectively mean they can only fire defensively and they have half movement. Now a word about the morale. Most units seem to be morale B, many are morale C, a few are morale A, and some are morale D. One more thing to say with that is that the adjustment for the leaders in this case is, sorry about the movement of the camera, here's some representative regiments and their leaders. So you can see Major Look, oh that looks really dirty. he's a 0, you can't really see, so he wouldn't adjust his unit's morale at all. This guy they would add +1, 0, and that one is actually a -1, so when his fellows are rolling for morale they get a minus. And you know, sometimes you have to roll for morale, like with the combat result, it's not your choice. Now the brigadier generals and the major generals and so forth, they don't have a plus or a minus, so this number is just a bonus they can add to any of their officers, their regimental officers, when those fellows are rolling for morale checks. So for example, Major General Ridicel there, he can add 2 for any of Major Vere and Brooks' morale checks, so that would be a 2 and a -1, but that's only, you know, a one-off, so he could spend that 2 all at once, or he could spend 2 1s for 2 different morale checks, and then it's gone for that. I believe it's the whole turn, not the phase, but I can't remember that exactly. I'll check that. Okay, so the next phase in the player turn is the movement phase. And so you may move unrouted units. So your morale is routed, you cannot move. Now, morale checks will not come in during the movement phase. They will come in during the defensive fire phase as a result of a combat result. And also in the offensive fire plays for the other side, they will come in as combat results. Now then the next phase is this withdrawal phase. The non-phasing player may attempt to withdraw his units from enemy zones of control. So you can attempt to withdraw from an enemy zone of control. If the enemy is in your zone of control, they may attempt to assault. They don't have to, but they can attempt to assault you. So prior to the assault attempt happening, you can try to withdraw. And you can see with morale of A, you're going to succeed most of the time. With morale of B, most of the time as well. With morale of C, it's just at 50-50. But there's also a chance you might actually rout away as you try and withdraw your fellows. They might turn tail and run. You know, that classic case, mistaking a retreat for a legate order. So that's withdrawal. Remember, that's affected by the officers' bonuses or minuses. Then the next phase is the reserve commitment phase. Again, this is a non-phasing player phase. Now he may do kind of the reverse from with the withdrawal. He may attempt to move any of his undisrupted, unrouted foot units that are not in an enemy zone of control into an enemy zone of control to reinforce against possible assault. So there you would commit reserve. And that's a bit harder, not quite as easy as withdrawing, not quite as guaranteed, but there's no rout possibility. And then we come to the assault phase. But prior to the assault phase, I want to just mention I did make a mistake, that in the movement phase, okay, I was going to say that you have to roll against morale to change the formation, i.e. from column to line, or from limber to unlimbered, or vice versa. In the movement phase, sorry, that was actually wrong. That is in the reserve commitment phase as well. So you can commit reserves who are out of zone of controls, and anyone who's in an enemy zone of control, you can try to change their formation. But that, at this point, it just costs a movement point in the movement phase. But in this phase, just prior to assault, it's going to be rolled against your morale. And as you can see, it's impossible for the lowest morale units and unlikely, going on up to 50-50 for the best morale unit. So that's a difficult thing to do, unless you've got a good leader and perhaps a major general or brigadier general nearby to add their bonus. Now that's useful because columns, if a column is assaulted and the top unit loses its morale check, then everyone suffers that result. No, that's not true. Then every unit below has to roll for a morale check, and in like a chain of if there's a failure from the one above. If your units are in line, then each unit is treated differently. So if one fails, then the others are unaffected. There's a few wrinkles to add to that, but I won't go into more detail. Then finally we have the assault phase, and then here you can see you have to roll to attempt assault. It's not a given. It's at 50-50 with a C morale, but it's not a given. So that needs to be checked. But no route, just a yes or a no. Now at this point it perhaps is worth noting that something that I have found with I think all Berg's rules that I have found is that they seem to be being rewritten right up to the moment before the rules are printed, and so glaring inconsistencies occur, such as this case here says if Indians and artillery have no officers and function without them, so they cannot have any of their morale check dials affected by any leader. But then there's another rule, 12.35, and where's that? Can we find it? Here it is. Artillery coups also have no officers. However, they may use any friendly commander to aid their die roll. Because that says leader, it doesn't stipulate officer. So there are sort of a few confusing inconsistencies or confusions in the rules there. So the basic sort of the basic rules is quite easy to grasp, but it's occasional little wrinkles like that are sometimes inconsistently spoken about, and so it's obviously the designer unsure where he's going with something until the last moment, and then not rechecking the whole final draft. Okay, perhaps I'll briefly speak about fire now, fire combat. I'll take a hypothetical case. Non-artillery units have to be adjacent for fire combat unless you are part of Colonel Morgan's or Major Dearborn's or a couple of other units on the English side that I don't know if you can see, but they have a small asterisk next to their morale, which means they have rifled weapons, so they can actually fire at 2 hex range. But otherwise, you must be adjacent. So, for example, this Cook's Militia company would have to be here with in its front 3 hexes. So facing is important. You face a hex side. You can fire into the front 3 hexes at the Iroquois Indian unit there. What you would do is first you would check range. So muskets can only fire at 1 hex range. Rifle gets a +1 at 1 hex and a -1 at 2 hexes. So you would check range, and if you were being artillery, you would check the type of artillery and get your modifier from the range here. Range of up to 11 hexes for 24 pounds and 8-inch howitzers. Then once you've got that modifier, you would check the terrain effects on combat, the fire result. So forest is going to be a -1 unless it's against Indians, which will be a -2. So these Indians here are unfortunate because they've been caught in this hypothetical example. They've been caught outside the woods, but they are, you can see they're in an entrenchment, so they will get a -2 for the trench. Then there's also some additions. For example, if the target is disrupted, routed, enfiladed, i.e. from one of those rear 3 hexes, which in fact this unit is being attacked from one of its rear 3 hexes, or if a reduced unit is firing, every unit has, not every unit, most units have 2 steps. On the back step you can see there's a dot in the top left hand corner. Some have a dot on the front side and they only have 1 step. So you add up those modifiers, then you would come back here and fire combat results table. So if the weapon firing is a cannon, you use this side. If you're firing against foot guns or bateau, or the small arms, which we have here, we're firing at foot or crew. We're not firing at artillery crew, we're firing at a foot unit. So we'd roll the die, add up our modifiers. I think we had a -2, a +1, and so aggregate of -1. So we would roll the die. You could get a 0. You could go all the way up to E, which means the unit loses a step. Now note, that's only going to happen if you have a modifier. So it's not going to happen with the natural D6, and any subtraction, that will never happen. So normally in small arms, you only get a result of a morale check. See, there's always going to be a morale check unless you go below 1, or a rout result, which is interesting to note. So small arms fire is always going to be effective unless possibly you go below a 1. So on this one, that could be the case. Against crew, not so effective. They might need a morale check, they might be automatically disrupted, or they might be routed, or then they would be eliminated because they don't have steps. And don't forget that if for the morale check the unit has drawn here, so it could still be disrupted or routed, even if it didn't have an automatic one. And that is the fire combat. So if we swiftly move on to the assault table, so we saw that you need a morale check to assault, and the defender has a morale check if he wishes to try and withdraw, so you can preempt the assault, withdraw out of it, or reinforce it with by committing reserves. Then you simply go to the odds ratio attacker to defender, but interestingly you don't have 1-to-1 odds. If you go above 1-to-2 or below 2-to-1, you then go to a differential. Now I've only had 1 assault combat so far in my game, so I can't really speak to much experience with this table, but let's take the absolute middle. You roll 2 dice, so 2 to 12 is the normal result. You might get a -1. You need to check your terrain modifiers first, so they're always down. If you're in a redoubt, that's very good. Streams, slopes, trench, ravines, bogs and forest are all going to affect attacker, or depending on if it's attacker or defender. Those are only for fire combat. So what else is there? I think that's the only adjustment for the assault results table. So the results are attacker or defender 1x, 1x, that means 1 step loss. Nothing or morale check, 1 step loss versus disruption, morale check, nothing, disruption, morale check. Okay, going all the way up to 3 steps lost, and 3 steps lost on the defender side, so the other way. You have adjustments to the assault column depending on routes, units without leaders, if the attacking unit is an Indian. Indians cannot engage in fire combat, they can only engage in assault combat and they get a bonus. And more bonuses if they're in a forest hex, so you don't want to be trapped by the Indians in a forest hex. a bayonet charge is an option which the English have. I think they just declare it, and if the assault is successful, it goes in. But you can see that if you're firing at a bayonet charge, you get a bonus. So in the defensive fire phase, so I guess they have, I don't know, I haven't done it, I guess they have to declare that in the movement phase. And so other, if the attackers are American rifle companies, the defender gets a favour, for example, because they're more sharpshooters, aren't they, than assaulting units. And then just to note that on those kind of the medium that equals morale 1x, 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 morale 1x, in those kind of like medium range results, the defender checks morale first if the odds differential is +1 or better, so the attacker has the advantage in that case. Otherwise, if the attacker's on the disadvantage, the attacker checks morale first. And so in that case, for example, if the defender checks first and the defender unit's right, the attacker does not need to undergo any otherwise necessary morale check, and vice versa.